Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Together, we explore topics of interest to legal innovators. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Lastly, have fun. Shaping the future of law requires significant effort, but finding joy in the process is essential. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. I have a fantastic guest. She is an amazing person. She is fascinated with law without her having a law degree. And I love people like that. Actually, I really love practicing law. I think it's a privilege to be in law. And I am really excited to be in law at the time when everyone else finds law exciting and shares my passion for changing it. So excited to have this conversation. Kara, welcome to Nose to My Legal Self. So excited to have you on the show. For folks who somehow managed to miss you on LinkedIn, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Olga. It's so great to see you. I love your shows. The variety of shows that you have, they're all so much fun. So I'm really happy to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Kara Peterson. I am coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am the co-founder of describe.ai. Nice to see everybody.
Awesome. And for folks who missed a few episodes a few months ago, I had your partner on the show as well. Tell us more about Describe yourself and your partner, and what are you guys doing?
Sure. So we are just about a year old. And one of the funny things I say about myself, I'm a marketing communications person who, as Olga said, has some definitely interest in the law, but not a career in the law. And if you would have told me about a year and a half ago that I'd be sitting here talking about my legal AI company, I probably would have asked you, what bad food you might have been eating, because that didn't make a lot of sense. So much has happened in the past year for us. And Olga mentioned my partner, who is also my husband, Rich, and I know he's out there watching. And we started just about a year ago. We launched a legal research company called Describe. And the whole idea behind what we're doing is we are leveraging AI to democratize access to the law. And it has been an incredible ride these past 12, 13 months.
I love that. And he was on a show. He explained in great, juicy detail how technology works. So if you missed that episode, definitely check it out. It's incredibly interesting. And Kara, so what bad food did you have? What happened to
I
you?
know, right?
What happened in your childhood? What food did you eat that you got up in the morning one day and decided, law, here I
It's
come?
law. Okay, so I have to go way back, and I'll try not to bore everyone to tears, but I grew up in a part of the country that's known for kind of being rabble rousers and interested in social good, and that is good old Madison, Wisconsin. If you are familiar at all, our nickname of that town is called Mad City, and it's a pretty fun place. So I grew up thinking a lot, surprisingly enough, about social justice and what individuals can do, just because that was the vibe in the town. And one of my funny stories that I tell that's a little embarrassing, but also kind of proud of, is in high school, I had a bank account, and this was like in the 80s, the mid 80s, and it had about $32 in it, money that I'd saved from my job working at a submarine sandwich shop. And I made a big stink to go close my bank account because I found out that the bank had ties to the apartheid government in South Africa. So I've kind of always been someone who looks at what individuals can do, even if it feels like a really small impact. And then I had a long career in communications and public health and schools of public health. And I think public health really sparked the fire that was finally came to fruition with the idea of getting into legal work, in particular legal information, in particular access to justice, because access to justice is so tied to other parts of public health, which may sound like a stretch, but they are connected.
It is not a stretch. We all should care about justice and laws, not
Right.
just lawyers, This is not just for folks who wear a black robe. This is not for folks who have a privilege of having JD or BUM membership. We should all care about it. And I love how you're passionate about it and trace it all the way back to Madtown. I will never look at that town differently again. Thank you for giving me that term. Tell me more. Tell me what happened.
Yep.
I mean, finding an legal information company is even further than just sort of finding access to justice company. What happened? Like, how did you get up in the morning and decide that this is what I'm doing now?
Right. Well, I would say so anyone in my space, like the business development, marketing sort of, side of things, my first recommendation is go and marry an engineer. That helps. So my partner is also
Maybe late for some,
it's
maybe in time for others,
it's right.
but
If
yeah,
you like him or
thank you
not,
for
it
that.
doesn't matter. Marry an engineer. No. So my partner, both in life and in this company, is obviously pretty excellent engineer. So what had happened is it was actually his brain. This is his brainchild, but I don't know if anyone's old enough to get this reference, but he kind of jokes that we're the Captain and Tennille of the legal tech industry because he writes songs, I sing them. He doesn't wear a funny hat, but he really does want one. So what happened is he had an idea himself. And so what it was is, like many people, you don't actually think about what you need related to a particular case law or sort of what is the world out there related to your issue until you have an issue. Right. And then the minute you have an issue, it's a bit overwhelming because if you're trying to find out information, and this, was a simple situation, but it's very hard. I mean, I don't need to tell the people listening here how hard it is to access this information. There's paywalls, there's language barriers, because legally it's its own language that most of us don't speak. So he quickly realized that if he were able to take these dense and, long and complicated legal documents, in this case, judicial opinions, and apply this AI tool, which was new at the time, which seems almost amazing that this was so recently, and it already feels like it's been around forever. But he applied this particular tool. It's not ChatGPT, but it's related, and created these summaries of judicial opinions, and they were just really, really good, and they were working so well. And as we know, one of the problems with the legal profession, or maybe not problems, but one of the barriers, let's put it that way, to cost, and why it's hard to serve many people, is it's a very labor intensive field in terms of, what thought process has to go into this work. So when he saw how well it did, he started to expand it a bit more. And, he's like, okay, why don't we summarize this group of laws? And why don't we just go ahead and summarize all of Massachusetts, and let's see what happens. And then he showed it to me after playing around with it for, a couple months. And I will say I immediately understood the potential of what he had built, and kind of poured my marketing and business development gasoline, I guess, onto the project. And here we are. Yeah, that doesn't sound so great. And then here we are about a year later, and we've summarized the entire, United States. We have 3.3 million judicial opinions out there. And as you know, it's free. We're providing it free at this point.
I love that. So I will consider the actionable recommendation to marry an engineer.
Yeah. Think about it.
Oh, thank you for that. I love the sort of he's building and then showing you, and you see the potential. What was going on through your head when you saw that?
Yeah. And, engineers are amazing, and they're always building something. And he's one of those people, he's always building something cool, and it's fun. And, I like to know what he's doing. But this one has a different flavor. And I think what the lens I looked at it through that really helped me understand the potential here was that public health lens, in the idea that if you have these gigantic systemic societal level problems that haven't really been able to be addressed for generations, access to the law is one of those. And in public health, there's lots of other ones, sort of disparate treatment of different populations, and all that kind of thing. It was pretty clear to see that AI would be something potentially, if we use it the right way and we build things the right way, something that will cause a paradigm shift in how we could deliver how we could deliver legal information and legal services. We don't do legal services, but other groups do. So it just really struck me that this was an opportunity to actually attack a problem that was so deeply rooted and so connected to so many other problems that I literally was jumping around. I was so excited, literally.
Oh, I love that. And
Yeah.
that your actionable advice does resonate to marry an engineer. I think you're gonna go
Yeah.
down on record as a woman who gives marital advice.
Right? I know.
And of course, your ability to storytell is something that is commendable as well. So thank you, Teresa, for pointing out both of these virtues and recommendations. Let's talk about something super easy.
Hmm.
How habitable law is, how welcoming it is of folks who don't have a law degree and those who are not members of the bar. Tell me more about the open arms with which you were welcomed in the field of law.
And you're probably going to be surprised at my answer, because legal tech has to be one of the most open and generous communities I've ever encountered. And I've worked across a lot of different industries, but legal tech in particular, and quite honestly, Olga, people like you and other women in this field are amazing. And so I actually feel maybe the rest of law is a separate issue, but I think this legal tech group, especially the legal tech people who are working around AI, and especially the women in this group, are amazing. And really, actually, we're very open. So, but in terms of sort of traditional law, right? I mean, there's some very serious concerns and very serious, sort of ethical considerations when you think about what does this mean? Like, you can't just take non-lawyers and say, hey, we're going to come up with these tools, because that causes a lot of problems. And there's also, of course, you're not supposed to actually do that, right? Unless you're a lawyer, in terms of like, you can't deliver legal services, right? You can't practice law unless you're actually allowed to practice law. So there's so many layers to this conversation, but I think it's a mixed bag. So there's a lot of welcoming. There's a lot of people who are really excited around this, but there's also a lot of people, and I'm not going to be the ones who say they're wrong, because there's things that are really true about what they're saying, that are just really terrified about this, really scared of AI, completely freaked out by what it implies.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about it. But before we
Yeah.
do, let's bring Rich on the stage because he too has a recommendation. And
Oh,
his is a little different. He recommends that if you are an engineer, you should marry a marketer. Now, I have to admit, as someone who is neither an engineer nor a marketer, I feel a tad left out. So maybe someone will give a recommendation to a poor lawyer in the conversation. That would be really
yes.
helpful.
Well, my recommendation for the lawyers is get them on your advisory board ASAP.
That's a good one. I love it. And we could be friends. Okay,
Yes,
but
let's go.
that's fantastic. Okay, let's keep talking because I do want
Yeah.
to talk about the terrifying part of AI.
Yeah.
I mean, why? Tell me more. Like, what do you see in the wild? There's folks in the tech community and legal tech community that are welcoming and excited and all of that. And then, of course, as you said, there's reservations and fear,
Right.
right? When you see a
Right.
fear in the eyes of people around you, it's unmistakable. You know exactly what it is. Tell me more about the fear.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this. So I, first of all, would say I respect the fear, and I recognize that it's necessary, right? If we run into this kind of situation blindly, we could cause harm, and we don't want to do that. And one of the things they say in public health that I think relates to sort of an access to justice bent to things is you're trying to go for harm reduction, right? By your bigger, initiatives. So like vaccinations or things like that, you're reducing harm. It doesn't mean there won't be some people who maybe are harmed, but you're trying to, on balance, do more good than ill, right? So with AI and the law, like if things aren't carefully planned and people just sort of chase the dollar, we may end up with tools that cause harm. So I think the fear, and this is just my perspective as a non-lawyer, I think the fear comes from a few different things. One is really the idea that it will harm clients, right? That perhaps tools will be built in a way that give people access to things, but things that don't really help them. Right. So it won't actually get them in a better place. The other fear, of course, if you go all the way to the other side and be a little less altruistic about it, is, fear of losing clients, losing income, all kinds of different things in that nature. And it will change the practice of law, and it will change maybe the billable hour, change how people are compensated. What is that going to look like, right? The business model is going to look different no matter what. So I think the fears there are a variety of fears. And we actually are working on some products that relate to some of these fears. I can't quite go into them yet, but we're being advised by some very brilliant minds about some of this. And of course, all the hallucinations early on with the advent of AI, the legal space didn't help. And I have more to say about that too, if you're interested.
I am very interested. I mean, let's talk about hallucinations. I mean, to be honest with you, as someone who's been in the courtroom, I can tell you lawyers hallucinate. We just call them liars. So
Yes.
it's like totally normal phenomenon. People who's supposed to be, officers of the court, they hallucinate. It's this thing that happens quite often. It's remarkable. And then they sometimes, very rarely, disbar their discipline, but honestly they just carry on and get away, most of them, for the rest of their career.
Mm,
And we don't tell them that their hardware malfunctions. We just sort of know who they are and deal with them appropriately. But yes, let's
right.
talk about hallucinations,
Yeah.
because we think it's somehow exclusive to technology. Tell me more. What are your deep thoughts on hallucinations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's also the same for bias, right? Because and it's not wrong that people should be concerned about bias in AI. It's super, super important. But if you could point to a judge or someone, out there in the legal system who has no bias, it doesn't exist, because all human beings have bias, right? We can't help it. We all have our sort of unrealized biases, right? That do all kinds of things. So if we had a judicial system that was completely fair and didn't ever take people's biases into account, like, okay, that would be hard to match, but we know that's not how it works, right? We sadly know that's not how it works. So with hallucinations, my argument, and again, as not a lawyer, a lot of the famous cases that we saw with hallucinations in briefs were bad lawyering, not necessarily the fault of the tool. So that doesn't mean, though, that there aren't instances where things hallucinate. And I do think the industry and legal tech, we should be better at being transparent about how we're making sure our tools are working, and the different sort of benchmarks that we produce. But when you think about it, it's not going to, I guess how am I trying to say is, we shouldn't let hallucinations, which do happen, and we should try to mitigate them. We shouldn't let that be the baby in the bathwater moment where, and this was the reaction that I saw in a portion of people that, were so freaked out by this and worried about this, that the idea was like, that's it. AI in law isn't going to work. We can't use it. Forget it. That's kind of gone down, but that was the first bit of the reaction, Olga, you probably remember. And the idea is that we don't want to do that. We don't want to overcorrect, because the potential to have AI help people who are not served currently is just too good to pass up, just because some people misused it and made mistakes.
Yeah, I think we're sort of a little bit past the idea that we can't use AI in
Yeah.
legal services. I mean, yesterday the ABA published their
Mhm.
opinion. I guess it was at least somewhat helpful in clarifying that you're still a lawyer and you're responsible. If anyone
Yeah.
needed that clarification, please go read it. It in a very dense text says exactly that, with a few more details. What I wish it actually did is something a little bit more constructive, is
Mm.
actually helping folks to become literate and better users. That would have been really helpful.
Right.
I really would like to see the bars to actually, instead of saying you're responsible, God help you do good, actually tell us what that looks like. But so
Mhm.
I think it's definitely here to stay. I think we're embracing it. But there's still a lot of reservations around it. And we do have some comments around hallucinations as something we need to address. I mean, we definitely want to make sure that our case law is accurate and our filings are on point. That's a great, fantastic thing to do.
Mhm.
But I'm curious, as you said, not to throw the baby with the bathwater. Don't do that. What
Yeah.
is that? What is that baby like? What is the promise of AI that can change the way we law, whether we consume law or practice law or share law, whatever we do with law, make
Mhm.
it better. What is that upside? Why should we persevere and perfect and definitely be very cognizant when we deal with the water we're trying to get rid of and keep the baby?
Keep the baby. Yeah. So there's kind of three ways I'd answer that. There's the altruistic way, the like, I care about humans way, which is, we all know the statistics. We talk about them on the show and other places of how bad the access to justice crisis is. Everyone's very familiar with the famous number of 92% of legal needs for low income Americans are not met, and that even between 40 to 60% of civil legal needs for middle income Americans are not met, and on and on and on. We all know there aren't enough lawyers, there isn't enough help to go around, and people are really suffering from that. So there's just the need from the societal perspective that just sucks, and we shouldn't have a society that people are left out like that. Like, we're not supposed to have a society like that. That's wrong. So that's one way to look at it. Why it's important is AI, again, has the potential to be the thing that causes the paradigm shift here because of just the way it works and the need that's there. The other side of it is you can look at much more towards the sort of capitalist side, where you're like, okay, if there's that big of a latent market and there's that many people that are not being served, there's obviously huge opportunities to come up with new ways to do things that can be fundable and can make revenue. So there's also the economic reason to go into this. But the one third area that I don't hear talked about quite as much, and that has to do with sort of the mental health and the just job satisfaction and sort of happiness that people in the legal system could have if things weren't so broken, right? I mean, most people don't go into the law to, end up in a crummy situation where they can't really help a lot of people and they're feeling depressed, and there's a lot of feelings of frustration. People go into law because they want to help other people and they want to do things. So if you look at all the way from the courts to just the solo practitioners or anybody who's in this space, efficiency, smarter ways to do things would just improve sort of the whole profession. Even just from a mental health standpoint, I think is worth
Yeah, I mean, there
investigating.
is no law school advertises on its brochure all the possible things that you would have to deal with on sort of mental level, and all the
Right.
disappointment and all the ways you spend your time not serving justice or your clients, which you have to do as part of your practice law. It's interesting, you actually in the beginning you also mentioned the part of learning. Not only do we practice law surrounded by trauma, we actually consume law and understand law through trauma. If you ask
Right.
folks how they learn about employment law, it's usually because they got fired.
Right.
And they
Absolutely.
learn about property usually through divorce. And they
Hmm.
really get to know custody of their pet and their children, again, through that very same divorce. And they
Right.
really get to know intellectual property laws when they no longer get revenue from their royalties. We
Hmm.
learn laws through trauma, and we actually practice it in a way that traumatizes the deliverer of that service, the lawyer. So there are a lot of trauma on both sides of receiving and delivering that legal advice. And therefore, it is not a positive experience. I mean, there is
Hmm.
nobody who raises her hand that says, I would like to negotiate a contract today for fun and giggles. Or better yet, let's litigate this thing. Sounds amazing. Or I want to separate from my partner because, oh God, I cannot wait to have this much fun in my life. Right? Trauma is kind of what law is and why we learn about it. And sure, that that part is here to stay, but it still could be streamlined and be delivered better and you may find a way to learn about laws before you're traumatized.
Exactly. And, that was one of the things that we really thought about when we were facing some issues we wanted to understand is, I have family members who are attorneys, I have friends who are attorneys, and it was still so hard. It was still hard to get the information. And I remember just thinking, I mean, we're privileged. We know it. We recognize it, college educated and have, attorneys in the family. What is it like if you don't? I mean, it's daunting, right? And the things that people have to face are very serious. Like you mentioned, employment, housing, family issues. These are not small things. And the other part where things get messed up is, with pro se litigants, they have to do what they have to do. And then the courts, we were talking to a judge at one point where, the courts have to handle pro se litigants coming through who are, not meaning to gunk up the works, but they are, right? And so if they're tools even just to help the process and the flow of all this, be more efficient, that's good for the whole system.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The discussion about hallucination seems to be very popular in the press. It's popular here. There are a lot of conversations like Teresa around human in the loop. I'm
Yep.
just curious, before we sort of go to our final few questions, I have a few questions. I definitely want to ask you about what it's like to work with your spouse. But hold
Yeah.
on, hold
Okay.
on, hold on. We'll talk about it. I would never wish it upon myself, but I will ask you how that happened to you and how much you love it and whether you still recommend it. But let's talk about the human in the loop and kind of what is the role of a human in this whole hallucination challenge, and how big of a challenge is it, a point in time challenge, or will it go away? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And if folks saw my LinkedIn, I dropped a little hint that we may be giving you a bit of a hint on some products coming out from us soon. Our first paid product is coming out and it is related to kind of helping with the hallucination thing. That's all I'll say for now. I am one of the people, and I think I'm pretty sure it was VLEX came out with this for their Shepardizer, that they were talking about the human in the loop. And I think, at least in the foreseeable future, humans in the loop are critical. Think about how AI works for like a mammogram, for example, like cancer detection. From what I understand, and again, I'm in the medical field either, there's AI pass, but then there's still a human looking at it. So I think the human in the loop is probably going to be the AI companies that are most successful, because you can't fully ask people to trust these systems without any human in the loop at this point. We're not there yet. Maybe we will be, but when you think about the risk that attorneys are willing to take, probably not willing to just be like, it's usually right. That's
Okay.
going to be hard. That's going to be hard. So I think human in the loop is key. And I don't actually foresee a future where lawyers become unnecessary or judges become unnecessary. Far from it. I actually think where things could get really interesting is how AI potentially could help actually divert some stuff from the courts and into more like alternative dispute avenues. And so I think the people who are going to have the most fun with this technology and kind of have it really transform their profession are folks like that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where practicing law is actually much more fun. You deal with a whole lot less administrative stuff,
Yeah.
and it's much more strategic and corresponds to what I've seen on brochures of most law schools, which is go change the world and be impactful. That's why I think people go to law school. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
basically have self-selected top guns going to law school. I mean, and then you ask them to do menial tasks, and then you wonder why they're depressed. I mean, I think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that they're not practicing on top of their license. And that's a tad disappointing for some. But we are coming to the end. And I have to ask, I met Rich. He is an amazing human being. And I now met you. You are an amazing human being. And I totally get the intellectual stimulation and shared passion. But, working with your spouse, you know, I don't know, depending who you talk to, you may have different opinions. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about it?
I love that. It's so funny. And I can hear him laughing from the other room, not literally, but I'm sure he is. So Rich's go-to joke for this is that it's every marketer's dream to have your IT person unable to escape you. And it's actually true. So, it's like the IT guy, where is he? Oh, I know he is. Where he is, he's right in the kitchen. So, yeah, so we actually are very lucky because we're great friends, too, and we really have similar interests and things that we like to do. And I would say the greatest benefit to being a co-founder with your spouse, as long as you're in a healthy, good relationship, is you have a set of core values that are the same. And so we share a vision for, what impact we'd like to make in the world, what impact we would like this tool to make in the world. We are not a nonprofit, we are a for-profit company, but we're super committed to using our brain power to create more justice and equity. And so, that may not be the case if you don't have a shared ethos. So I think that's the best part. And the worst part is probably sometimes forgetting to talk about other things, or him getting annoyed with me because I have too many to-do lists. But yeah, it's small compared to the good.
But I mean, you don't have to start a company for your spouse to be annoyed at you. I mean,
That's true.
that's just a normal part of a marriage, though.
That is true. It's yeah, he's annoyed with me for asking about the website redesign rather than, did you do the laundry?
That sounds relatable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you talked about sort of shared ethos and dream and sort of passion and vision. What is it like? What does success look like at the end of the day? You mentioned it's a for-profit company,
Yeah.
and I firmly believe that you can do a lot of good with money, and sometimes it's actually easier to do good with money because you can buy stuff and you can buy good stuff for good people. I mean, it's really that simple. And so I'm just curious, kind of what is that vision and how are you guys thinking about it and what does success look like?
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it. And if you think about the continuum, right, you've got the nonprofit model way over here, which is awesome and great. And we do so many things that are wonderful with nonprofits. You go all the way to the other side and you have entrepreneurs who are trying to build the next unicorn and are just doing everything they can to maximize profit so they can sell quickly to one of the big guys and get out. There's a lot in between. So we are trying to be a leader in the space of the in between, where we will be profitable, there's no question, but we will also be ethical, and that attracts a different type of investor, that attracts a different type of community, but it's really possible, and we don't have to only maximize making a few people really, really rich with AI. Like, we can actually makes a bunch of people well off and actually fix some stuff. It doesn't have to be this zero sum game that we seem to think it is in the United States
Well,
entrepreneur.
more importantly, whatever you imagine your favorite product, whatever that may be, iPhone, something else, and then think about how much you paid for it. Okay, and that might have been a lot or not a lot. Okay, and now imagine life without it. Like, your life will be incomplete.
Yes.
I mean, the way we appreciate things in life is by paying for things that make our life more complete. By delivering goods and services that help people, that in itself, I would say, profit or nonprofit, is the community service, because all
Right.
you have to see is a disappointment on the face of a customer who doesn't get her product that she wants.
Exactly. And there's so like that's back to the latent market with the amount of unmet need out there. It's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, gee, there's a whole heck of a lot of opportunity right here. It's that's why everyone's going crazy for legal tech right now.
Yeah. I love living, as I said, in the times when the world is sharing my passion for changing the way that we law. I think my adventures in law would have been utterly unsatisfying in any other time. So thank God I was born when I was born. So thank you so much for that. And Kara, this has been a great conversation. You and I can have a conversation all day. I heard you, and I love that Rich and you are working together. Now both of you have been on my show. It's been amazing. So thank you so much. What is one takeaway or action item you want folks to take from this conversation?
Yeah, and thank you, Olga. You're such a force, and you were one of the earliest people that we connected with. So we have to just say you're always going to have a special place in our heart because you helped us get on our way. So we appreciate you so much. I would say that what I would love for people to do is to go away from this conversation thinking, well, gee, maybe my idea is something I could actually build, or maybe this thing I was hoping to learn more about is actually accessible. If we can do it, you can do it. And I think the area of justice technology is absolutely ripe for exploration. So I encourage people to learn more about justice technology. And of course, you can always visit the amazing Justice Technology Association to learn more. That's the place where a lot of us gather to scheme and come up with cool ideas. So we'd love to see you there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for fantastic conversation. You have a lot of fans in the room uh, talking about social justice and for a terrific conversation we've had. Thank you so much for being active and being part of this conversation. And thank you for being on this show. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining. I will definitely see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. The future belongs to builders. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Keep in mind, the future of law is all lit up. Let's roll up our sleeves, innovate, build, and change the world of law together. See you soon.